Julian Assange has been kept on his own volition. He had to go there and basically hide out in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. What's it been, 3 years now, Derek J? Do you know when it was that he wound up in there?
I don't have the facts on that, but it
feels like at least
2
years, if not 3.
Yeah, but now he's appearing. He snuck into the U.S. through his technology.
Now, that was sort of an announcement that came out ahead of that time. It's like, Julian Assange will be leaving the Ecuadorian embassy or something like that came out. It was like a promo for what occurred.
Yeah, I was following because I find this guy just so fascinating with his history of WikiLeaks and sharing information and changing the world through bringing information to people.
Looks like it was August of 2012, so a solid 2 years now. Wow. He's been in that Ecuadorian embassy.
Yeah, well, I really like him because he's just an expert on getting past, or going over the heads of authorities and just saying, I'm going to bring this to the people whether you like it or not. And he's proven that by hologramming into a U.S. conference. Though his body may not be able to make it, the information about his body position.
Did we mention what he's known for? I don't know if we did that.
No. Julian Assange is known as the creator of the website WikiLeaks.
Which is why he's a wanted man.
Yes. It's a website which has, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of declassified cables, or I don't know if even some of them are still classified.
Lots of info that the governments of the world, specifically the U.S. and the United Kingdom, these governments do not want you to know about, and he has sort of ruined the party for a lot of the government guys around the world, and so that's why they're pretty upset at him.
Yeah, it's also the website where Chelsea Manning uploaded her videos about the war crimes that were happening in Iraq, and that upset a lot of bureaucrats as well.
And Chelsea Manning, unfortunately, is in prison for a long time.
Yes. So here's the article from Russia Today that says Julian Assange has transcended the confinement of his Ecuadorian embassy asylum to attend the 2014 Nantucket Project as a hologram. In his ghostly entirety, Assange was speaking about censorship, control, and manipulation of history, which I just think is it's so beautiful to have an action like this. Like, he's talking about censorship beyond the gated walls, like here he is
stuck, right?
Well, not really. I mean, yes, he's stuck. His
stuck
body
and
is
not
stuck.
I find him, for one, I think he's a superlative speaker on the issues that he confronts. But I think it's he can speak more powerfully than most. He's stuck in the embassy, but he's using technology to transcend that.
Yes, and speaking with filmmaker Eugene Jarecki, Assange closed the 2014 event, sharing his thoughts on the importance of research and free access to information and the risks of censorship. He said, quote, "As a researcher, I'm all too well aware of what people are now calling Google blindness, that the information you can't find on the internet doesn't exist." And he didn't miss a chance to take on the corporation Google and called it a revolving door of NSA and a close partner of the U.S. government. And he's right, but I'm seeing a lot of good development from Google as well. The FBI is slamming them for having too good encryption.
I have that story, and that's one of those things that we haven't had a chance to really talk about here on Free Talk Live. And just kind of insert, we can get back into Assange here in a moment, but I actually had that pulled up for the show prep tonight. So the news was that Apple, with their new iOS version, they have implemented an encryption scheme that even Apple will not be able to break. Or so the claim is, right? That's the claim, is that now the user can encrypt their own data. In fact, it'll be encrypted by default, apparently, with the new Apple system. And then Google came out with basically a Me Too announcement. Oh, yeah, we've got that. And then, in fact, Google is...
Now, I've heard that, like, this sort of battle between the two giants here, and I tend not to believe either, that, Apple's more user-friendly when it comes to sharing the information to the government, more individual-friendly. No, Google is. I've heard both sides of this.
I don't believe them.
How could you know?
Yeah, that's just the thing. Like, I know that the FBI here is acting like they're all upset. The headline is from the Washington Post. James B. Comey, the FBI director, has criticized Apple and Google on Thursday for developing forms of smartphone encryption so secure that law enforcement officials cannot easily gain access to information.
Drat! We've been foiled again!
Stored on the devices, even when they have valid search warrants. So the idea being that
these giant corporations that are bought and paid for by U.S. government tax dollars, they've gotten us.
Yeah, that's just it. Like, I don't know if I believe anybody, right? I don't know if I believe that Apple and Google's new encryption scheme is really ironclad, or that it doesn't have some way for the government to get access, or if the government's being honest, or this is like all some sort of show to make people think that there's actually real encryption going on here when in fact there's still a back door. I don't know.
I buy it. Here's why. Google and Apple are still companies that have to depend on their customers buying things.
That's true.
And they are competitors, meaning, and they don't have a monopoly over encryption. Like, right, encryption, anyone could use it. So any company that comes along and offers better encryption to their customers, they're probably going to win out.
Right.
So
and if
Apple and Google need to embrace this.
If we find out that what they've told us about the NSA up to this point is a lie, which we found out everything about the NSA up to this point is a lie, and we refuse to do business with them in the future, they'll throw us in jail for not paying our income tax. Whereas if we find out that what Apple and Google have said at this point is a lie, then some people will attempt to stop using them. I will feel entirely differently about Apple and Google. More so Google, like I'm on a team, right? I like the Google team better than the Apple team. I'll admit it. But I'm going to feel entirely different about Google than
if it turns out they were lying about this new encryption. If it turns out they're lying
about it. Like right now, I'm a Google stockholder, and I'm going to really not like this company much.
I don't know.
No, I get it, and I want to believe them, but at the same time, I still don't trust Apple or Google with data encryption.
Good, use your own encryption.
Well, that's the other thing. What the hell do you trust? Because now, TrueCrypt, which was this independent program that had existed for years, they came out earlier this year with a press release saying, well, TrueCrypt's not secure. We're abandoning the project. And so that was really bizarre. And then when the TrueCrypt guys came out with that notice, they said, we think you should use Microsoft's encryption scheme. Like, what? Why would the people who are behind TrueCrypt, this open source encryption project, recommend Microsoft for encryption on their way out the door? It was just so suspect and so bizarre. Who do you trust out there? If you're not a programmer, you can't audit this code. Now, rumor, from what I've heard, I can't check this claim, but from what I've heard, there's a group of people out there who are auditing TrueCrypt's final code release to see if it was indeed secure. I don't know how far along they are on that audit. I don't know if that's been completed yet or not, but still I would trust something like TrueCrypt more than I would trust Apple or Google.
Did TrueCrypt have any sort of warrant canary or a way to tip off their customers that they've been contacted by the authorities?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Well,
maybe one of our geek listeners will be able to inform us on that.
I wonder if something like that could become more common as we see the federal government is sticking its nose in places people might not expect. Might it become more common to visit freetalklive.com and see a message that says, we have not been contacted by the authorities, just to be aware of those sorts of things when the message sort of changes, right?
So I like the idea of what Apple and Google have done here, and I like that the FBI appears to be upset by it. It's just hard for me to really trust mega corporations.
Well, they've got the FBI is not upset because they've got an arsenal of weapons that they can use to unlock phones. It's not like one little bit of encryption is really going to stop them.
If Google and Apple have encrypted their phones, yes, the FBI is upset because they like you to be wide open to them.
Well, they want it to be easier to crack your phone open, but it's not impossible. I mean, I'm sure they've got another way.
If a burglar that has robbed your house every month for a year finds out you've put in a new security system, is he going to be upset? I think upset's a proper term for that burglar.
Well, let's go back to why Julian Assange thinks Google is evil. He says,
yeah, I definitely want to hear that.
In the digital world, Assange says people could just delete history very easily, a notion he attributes to Orwell's writing, "He who controls the present controls the past. He who controls the past controls the future."
There's more about Assange coming up. The hologram version of Assange. We're talking about Julian Assange, the hologram version of Julian Assange, who apparently appeared via hologram to, what was it, some sort of conference in the U.S.?
Yeah, it was called the 2014 Nantucket Project, which I've never heard of, but it sounds like a tech thing maybe. He was talking about why he doesn't like Google, says it's a sort of a revolving door with the federal government, and that they hand over requests for information too easily. And he's concerned about that because he says, as George Orwell put it, he who controls the present controls the past. He who controls the past controls the future. And so he's sort of calling Google like this controller of information, because if it's not online, it doesn't exist.
Well, you may remember the story from, I think it was earlier this year, if not late last year, where the European Central Court or whatever, the International Court, they came up with some ruling that essentially made it so Google would have to pull information on request.
Yes.
So if
only in certain places too.
In Europe, basically, as I understood the ruling.
No, not all of Europe. Because
No?
there are some countries, for example, Norway, I believe, which
Really?
holds information to be like sacrosanct, and you know they will not delete it. They'll protect all information that's stored in Norway's servers, even if it's slanderous lies and like criminal. They'll keep it.
Well, that was the idea, was that if you saw something on Google that you didn't like, that you could contact them through some form now and have them remove search results. So it wouldn't delete it from the internet. If you knew how to get to it, you could still get to it. But deleting something from Google is almost like deleting it from the internet, simply because so many people use Google as their search engine of choice. And when that news came out, that was one of the saddest moments for me. As somebody who, like Mark, I like most of what Google does. I think they bring a lot of useful services to mankind, and it's obvious that that's true because they're used by a lot of people.
But they're dangerously unprincipled. I mean,
their principle is supposedly do no evil, right? Isn't that what their motto is? But clearly, they don't really know what that means.
Yeah,
evil's hard to define.
Yeah. So that when that happened, I just thought, boy, that's not cool, because I thought the right thing for them to do. I think it was actually France was where the decision originated. And please, if you're in Europe and you can correct me on this, let us know at 855-450-FREE. But when that happened, I thought, oh well, what Google really ought to do is just close all their offices in those countries where this is happening and say, oh, well, you don't want us to be here? Okay, see you later. We can still offer you Google from another country. We can still have our website accessible by these countries, but if we close our offices there, then we can't be regulated by you. But no, they went ahead and accepted the regulation. And they came up with some form that you can submit and have stuff pulled from their search results. It was a huge disappointment for me.
Okay, but I gotta just, to be at the defense of Google here, they're like this huge rolling ball that's got all this momentum, right? And they're moving on their path. To have like minor obstructions like, oh, you can't do this, can't do that, they're ready for those sorts of obstructions. They'll tackle those problems. They're not just going to say, all right, let's pack up and leave.
That's they're just tackling government problems here and there.
That would be how they would tackle that problem. I mean, because by being able to use government force to force Google to remove search results because you don't like what some of the results are, that is, to me, a strike at what their business model was all about. Google was all about revealing information on the internet, helping connect their users with information, and this essentially short circuits that. So,
I don't know.
Like Amazon, for instance, they will close a warehouse and close their offices in states where they're proposed to have sales tax put on their product, or more regulations. The more regulated more regulations that are proposed in any given location means that Amazon's likely to just say, see ya, we'll go over here where we're wanted. And I was disappointed Google didn't do that, because they could have.
I'm speculating, but I think the difference might be, imagine you're an engineer at Google and you're tasked with the problem of, oh, here's a new technical problem to solve. We've got these websites that can't be shown to these certain people. Figure it out. Or your alternative is to just leave, just pack it up. I mean, as a tech person who works for Google, you want to be a go-getter and get around this problem. So I just imagine
that's an executive decision, though. I mean, the executives made that decision.
It's not engineers who are like, oh yeah, let's go comply with the government.
Yeah, and it's the engineers who have to implement it. Now, I'm sure against their better judgment, I'm sure the engineers would prefer to have open access to information at Google. But at the same time, I don't blame Google for implementing the Chinese restrictions too. Like if you use Google in China.
I don't like that very much.
I don't like it, but I also don't blame them because I guess China could probably ban Google or something like that. So it's a tough. I'm not saying it was an easy choice for them to make. It was just a bummer.
When you get big enough, you have to play politics, and I really don't like politics.
Yeah. Anyway, go on with the story from Assange.
Yeah, so he says, quote, the last 5 years have been the greatest period of education that ever existed. And Assange's hologram, added in front of the audience, gathered in a tent overlooking Nantucket Harbor, Massachusetts. Quote, the greatest number of people to the greatest geographic extent are learning about their environment and the complexities of the international environment. Yeah, he's right.
Yep.
Quote, my conclusion is that the best way to go about changing things is simply to act. At its essence, when civilization is working well, it commits us to not do dumb things again. To do that, we have to have the ability to learn from each other, to learn from the past, how our institutions actually behave, their internal dialogue. Ideas can only be as good as their inputs.
I totally agree with what he's saying there, and I think that's what we're seeing happen here in New Hampshire with the Free State Project. And of course, for those that are new to the show, the Free State Project is the reason why we're here. It's the idea of moving liberty-oriented people all to the same geographic area to take action. The libertarian movement, we talked earlier about all the books in the libertarian movement, and there's so many books. You can spend all your life reading libertarian-oriented books.
You really, I bet you could come darn close.
Fiction, nonfiction, they're all out there. Academic, easy to read, it's all there. And that's what libertarians and liberty-minded people have been doing for decades, is they've been reading books and running political campaigns and that's
writing
about
books.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with reading and writing books. That's great.
These are great ways to spread ideas.
But it's not as much action as I would like to see. And we're seeing the action part of libertarianism, taking those great ideas from the books and applying them in real life. We're seeing that happen to the greatest extent here in New Hampshire. And it's having an impact. So that action really does do things, and it really does help bring people onto the ideas of freedom because, your movie, Victimless Crime Spree, Derek J., has influenced people to make the move here to New Hampshire. They've seen that. They saw the action, and they were excited by that action. And also, he's talking about showing how the institutions work. No one's better at doing that than the people in Keene, New Hampshire, than the activists like you, Derek, who, you're video blogging on a nearly daily basis, live to Derek J's, your Derek J Live channel on YouTube. We've got, of course, various different videos that have gone up. I've got a court video that's encoding right now that's going to go up with my trial from a couple weeks ago. And so we show people what these bureaucrats do. We show people the damage that the state can do to peaceful people's lives. And, of course, Cop Block's doing a great job of that on a nationwide basis as well. But I think that's so important to take action, but don't take action in a vacuum. You've got to have a camera there. You've got to show people. You've got to document your action so the people who are just watching and waiting and curious to know what's happening can know and hopefully be inspired by you to take action of their own. And one action I recommend is to join the Free State Project at freestateproject.org. There's more coming up. We're talking about the hologram version of Julian Assange, who appeared sitting on a stool next to a real person sitting on a stool on a stage at the Nantucket something or other, some kind of tech expo in the United States. So much to the chagrin of U.S. authorities and other government goons around the world, they were unable to arrest the hologrammatic version of Julian Assange. It would be pretty amusing to try to fake out the government guys with a hologram and make them think Julian Assange really is somewhere and have the SWAT team run in and try to arrest him and put handcuffs on a hologram.
Now the hologram didn't look like Julian Assange was really there, right? I mean, it was...
it looked pretty close.
These holograms look good on video. I don't know how they actually look
pretty good
in real life.
It's better than Princess Leia in Star Wars.
It is better.
It's the same idea, though.
I was even looking during the video to see, can you see through his hand? Like when he lifts up his hand, can you see through his hand to his shirt? And you can a little bit, so you can tell that it's a hologram if you're looking carefully. But I would imagine,
Is there any kind of special... What kind of special equipment do they use
don't know. I was actually looking for that during the break there. If somebody knows what the equipment is that is making this possible, because Assange's hologram isn't the first hologram. If you look up the Tupac hologram, because as you know, Tupac was allegedly murdered in the 1990s, but it was like last year, I think, when he made an appearance on stage during someone's concert. Tupac comes out and sings a song, you know?
Wow.
Like they had, and it looked like Tupac on stage. So what it looks like in real life, I don't know. Does it appear to have depth, or is it like a flat-looking thing when you're sitting in an audience? Because obviously, if you're looking at a video, you're not
It's
seeing
always going to look flat.
Right, you're not seeing, unless you're looking at 3D video, which most people aren't, you know, you're seeing a flat image, so you wouldn't really be able to perceive any depth in it, but it looks persuasive from from the snapshots and the videos that I've seen of these things. They look very persuasive, and if this is like generation 1 of hologram technology, then generation 2, 3, 4, and 5 is going to be progressively more amazing and more lifelike and realistic and convincing and likely more affordable, to where this guy's life size. You know, it's not like
it's
you're
going
saying
to be more affordable.
Princess
certainly.
Leia in Star Wars she was tiny in those scenes, right?
Yeah.
She was like a little hologram, and this is a life-size hologram. So I mean, we're already past that point, which is incredible.
That is amazing.
And but what's the usefulness of it besides, like, I'm thinking WebEx, you know, the Citrix GoToMeeting or whatever, these companies that do these meetings. I mean, think that would be useful to have people sort of hologrammed in, maybe perhaps even to a virtual room where they can have a virtual meeting. You can already sort of do that with these programs that I've just mentioned, and probably a myriad
Google
of others.
Hangouts,
Google
Skype,
Hangouts.
that kind of thing.
You can kind of do it already, just sort of sitting there.
We have things like, or there's already been things like Second Life, where you have sort of this virtual room with a character that represents you. So basically, you would be taking the virtual rooms that already exist, combining the new hologram technology with those virtual rooms. I mean, we're not far away from this at all.
I kind of feel like you get a better experience with having one of these virtual meetings. And I think the experiences are very important when you're trying to have meetings, because a lot of times it has sales involved. So, you know, body language and facial expressions, these things are extraordinarily important. I'm just trying to figure out anything else that it might be useful for.
Yeah, well, I was speculating that porn may be leading the charge.
Porn has to be in there somewhere.
It won't be successful if porn doesn't pick this up. I mean,
well, the internet, to some extent, is about porn.
Well, right. We were talking about a VHS versus beta the other night on the show as well, when we were discussing thorium and uranium. Somehow led into a VHS versus beta discussion, and Daryl pointed out, and I think it's correct, that the porn industry chose VHS, and that was a huge bump for the VHS world.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yep.
Yeah, I also speculate that these holograms, you know, I would want many of them throughout my house. Like, instead of buying art, I could buy hologram images and just change them every day or week or hour. You know, you could have art that changes on your wall.
We already have picture frames that'll show different photos, right?
Yeah, but this is even cooler.
Sure. Oh, it looks very cool.
So, Jarecki, the filmmaker that Assange was speaking with, he compared the WikiLeaks founder's ghostly appearance to the Star Wars that we're talking about here. He says, quote, "In a wink at life imitating art, it's the same old story of rebels against an empire. But in this case, Assange and kindred spirits such as Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, and Aaron Swartz see themselves as a real-life band of rebels, loosely arrayed against an unholy global alliance of government and economic interests." Wow.
I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah, the Nantucket Project. Oh, here's our answer. It's an annual conference held over the past 3 years. Strives to provide a relaxed setting to gathered innovators, entrepreneurs, thinkers, and, quote, decision makers.
All right.
So, I guess executive people. So, yeah, I think it's great. I want to see more of these holograms. I'm excited that Julian Assange has snuck out of his embassy. I want to see him appear all over the place.
He claims in another article I was pulled up here, because I was trying to find info on the hologram tech, but I found another article about Julian's appearance. The claim is he's planning on leaving the Ecuadorian embassy at some point. I'm not sure how that's going to transpire, but he seems to believe that it will happen, and that'll be interesting to find out. Also, another addendum to our discussion about TrueCrypt. We were talking about these big companies, Google, Apple. You know, do you really trust them with your security? They're claiming their new operating systems on their phones are encrypted by default now, meaning that it's supposedly going to be a lot more difficult for the law enforcement to get access to your phone, because what they used to be able to do is just go to Google and Apple and get in through the the back door. But now their claim is that not even Google and Apple can crack the encryption because it's it's up to you to, I don't know, it's encrypted by default, and somehow they've set it up to where they can't get into it. So do you really believe them? I don't know. We'll get your answers. I asked that question on Facebook. But Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends sent a point about TrueCrypt, because I said, well, TrueCrypt, they bailed on their project. TrueCrypt was this independent open source project to create encryption that was really secure. And then all of a sudden, earlier this year or late last year, the TrueCrypt guys abandoned their project and said, we think you should use Microsoft instead of our project, and our project is not secure. And he says a lot of security people think that when TrueCrypt told people that was their warrant canary. That they
What's a warrant canary?
The warrant canary is what Derek was talking about earlier.
Yeah, it's a warning that some websites or businesses will put up in a public place to let their customers or public know that they have not been contacted by the government. And so if that ever disappears, well, you can figure out they have been contacted.
Right, because the government contact would say, you can't tell anyone you've been contacted. So at that point, they would remove the message saying they had not been contacted. Therefore, they're not telling anyone they haven't been that they've been contacted, but by default, that they've been contacted.
But,
so
I mean, shouldn't I, as a user, just assume that the statement that they make is true, that they've been compromised?
Well, that's what he's saying here, is that the reason the TrueCrypt team has been acting so, that they acted so strange at the end of, bailing out of their own program and saying to use Microsoft instead, suggests that maybe they were contacted by the government and this was their only way of really communicating that. Obviously, it's speculation, but I think it's pretty interesting and could be true. Toll-free number tonight, because they're saying that the security experts are saying they think that the last version of TrueCrypt is secure, and then that again is why it's being audited to see if it is indeed. So we were talking about the Warrant canary, and I had asked the question, well, has anybody really done this? I mean, the idea has been put out there. We've discussed it before on this program. The Freedom Fiends with Michael W. Dean, they've got their own Warrant canary. You're one of the regular hosts on Freedom Fiends, Derek J.
Yes.
It's one of your many radio responsibilities that you have taken on for yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the sort of the show memes, if you will, is that you constantly say worms, usually when you're going to break or coming back in from a break. It's
a substitute for hello, goodbye, this is cool. It's like aloha.
Worms.
It's like word used to be.
Yeah, sort of like that. And so the Warrant canary for Freedom Fiends is if y'all stop saying worms, that means that, because it would be a huge noticeable thing if Freedom Fiends stopped saying worms. So that would mean that someone on the Fiends or the Fiends in some way had been contacted and threatened with one of these national security letters, threatened by the FBI or the CIA or whoever with some threat that says, you will not reveal that you have been threatened. You can't tell anyone about this national security letter or we're going to hurt you even more. That kind of thing.
Okay, I won't. I'll just do everything radically different from now on, and everyone will notice.
So I thought that was an interesting way to go about things. But my question was, has someone with a Warrant canary actually had to utilize their Warrant canary? Have they done something like that? Have they pulled the statement from their website? Have they gone through this? And you found an example.
Well, yeah, I was suspecting that LavaBit, which was an old encrypted email service founded by Ladar Levison, I suspected that they had used a Warrant canary. I seem to remember one back when they were pulled down after being contacted by the feds about like Edward Snowden's emails and stuff. But I didn't find that. Instead, what I found was news that Apple's Warrant canary has recently disappeared.
Recently?
I just checked the date. September 18th of this year. So just a couple of weeks ago, here, this reading from the link I found was on Reddit, the technology Reddit. And it's reading from gigaohm.com. Jeff John Roberts writes that in his summary, Apple included language in its first transparency report to say that it had not been contacted subject to a Section 215 Patriot Act request. And that language is now gone. Pretty big deal. So it's explained in the article at gigaohm.com, but just to condense a lot of data, Cory Doctorow, this guy who's a cyber activist and writer, he blogs about militarization of police and warrantless spying. He was actually the one who recognized that the language had disappeared, and this was part of their privacy agreement. It doesn't say for sure that they were contacted. Maybe they just changed their language. Who knows? But it makes me suspect.
Certainly sounds that way. And if you know of any examples you can share with us, our toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. Now, what happens when you get one of these letters? What if you accidentally leave the letter out and somebody else picks it up? You know, if the letter comes to Free Talk Live, care of Mark or Ian, and it says, "You at Free Talk Live will not reveal that you have received this letter, or else you will be charged with all kinds of terrible things and locked up forever."
I've just got to say right now, God bless America.
What are you getting at, Mark? Does that mean you've had a letter or something?
Obviously, we are being protected by these people, and they wouldn't send out things like this unless it was absolutely necessary. Surely the government wouldn't compromise the Bill of Rights over just some kind of convenience for themselves or anything like that. This must be a real issue.
No, this really happens, though. I mean, there are people who've been sent these national security letters. One of the classic examples.
And they all deserve it.
One of the classic examples was a librarian, I think, who at some point came out about it. I forget the details of that
If
case.
we found out that information, clearly she's a seditious commie.
I don't think that's a very good warrant, Canary, Mark, because if that's what you're suggesting is that you would change your whole perspective on the show, that would be kind of annoying to have to deal with a sort of a commie mark on a nightly basis. But I was thinking, what if we changed your name back to Manwich? When we first started the show...
that's great. Get ConAgra Foods to sue us.
2002.
That's our Warrant Canary.
Your name was Manwich on the show on a nightly basis. You weren't Mark. And then it wasn't until 04 or 05 or something like that when we got syndicated.
I think it was 05.
Yeah, and so after a while, after
Maybe
we got syndicated, the network that we're on, we've never had Genesis Communications Network is a great network, and I'm so grateful that we've been working with them over all these years because basically they've left us alone. They've never said, you need to change this about your show, and you can't talk about this, and they've never had any programmatic input onto the show at all. And I appreciate that about them. But the one thing that ever happened was in the early days, they got a little nervous about Mark using the name Manwich on
specifically
the air.
Ted Anderson, and it's great.
Understandable.
It's great advice.
Why would they be concerned about that?
They were worried about being sued by ConAgra Foods, and so they asked that we change his name to something else.
Okay,
and so we changed it to Mark.
Right. The one demand that our syndicate has ever had of us was probably the best advice we got.
It wasn't an unreasonable thing at all. But I think we should do something like that. Like if we're going to have our own Warrant Canary, it should be something else that's obvious.
Where you change your name?
Yeah, but it wouldn't have to go on forever, right? Like we could just do if Mark all of a sudden's name is Manwich for a whole week or 2 weeks or something like that, like that could be our Warrant Canary. And then we could, switch it back. And the people who are listening often enough would know that something was up.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just come up with, rather than putting ourselves in jeopardy with the Manwich thing, why don't we just come up with some new name for you? We could call you Lollipop McSugarPants. And that would, people would immediately know that there's something wrong.
I'm for it. Yeah, but that's a little too long.
Too many syllables.
Let's just shorten it to sugar.
All right, I like that.
Sugar britches.
Sugar?
All right, sugar.
I could be sugar. I could do that.
Can we all get spice names?
Yeah, we should all do that. Yeah, we should
all.
What
is that?
That's a great
Cinnamon.
idea.
What are spices?
Oh, so the Spice Girls had different names.
Oh, no, not like, the Spice Girls did, but I just meant like general spices. Isn't sugar, does that not count as a spice? I guess sugar, spice, and everything nice is where I'm getting that from.
I don't think that would be a spice.
Yeah,
no.
I guess not. Whoops.
Yeah, how do you define a spice?
Well, I know that salt is considered a savor, not a spice. I think it's because it's mineralized. I don't know. But
this could be fun.
We'll call you mineralized. That'll be.
Well, sugar is from a plant. So I don't know. Is sugar a spice? Somebody has asked the internet this already.
Of course, the internet must have been asked this.
And it's not.
Yeah,
it's a sweetener.
Sugar does not add flavor. It is strictly for sweetening.
It doesn't add flavor.
Yes, it does. If something doesn't taste
sugar
right,
and
I say add some
nice.
sugar.
Sugar was considered a spice, and it was at one point was used for was excessively in the pursuit of good life. Sugar is not a spice. I think
the internet doesn't agree. Then,
the internet is not clear as to whether sugar is a spice or not.
We need to ask Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter. Although it seems like we really only get responses on Facebook. These questions.
I think if
but I like that idea.
Baby Jesus were around today and the wise men had to bring him something, they would have brought him sugar this time.
Why? It's so cheap.
Well, oh yeah, you're right. I guess they were trying
to bring him. The wise men would
like,
bring him
expensive
Bitcoin.
Things. Yeah, not bad.
I think it's a good idea to have everyone on the show change their name for a certain period of time as as a warrant canary.
As a warrant canary,
Yeah.
just in case. So we have a like some website somewhere that tells people that we're going to change our names, or we just do it.
I can't believe that Ian wouldn't take his national security letter and just read it on the air.
Yeah, you would.
I might. I don't know.
It's pretty
But
likely.
don't put the rest of us in
Federal
jeopardy.
prison, though. I don't
What
know
have you done with the real Ian? This might be the warrant canary. Is Ian saying maybe?
I don't know. I've never received one of those letters, so it could be pretty bad being locked up with Chelsea Manning. Nathan is on the line in Texas. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello, Nathan.
I like the sound of sugar, spice, and everything nice to start out the show with. But,
That's a little too long, though.
The
fewer syllables, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Well, there's an infinite number of choices you could make. You could go with literary characters. You could be Larry, Hall, Curly. On the Sunday show, Steph and Brian and Mark would be Harry, Ron, and Hermione. But I think the best...
That's a good one.
I think the best warrant canary you could probably go for is something I heard from a Free Talk Live show in 2005 or something, where Mark sarcastically asked, well, how come you're not using James or Dean Martin or Frank Sinatra for the bumpers? Get rid of Holy Wars, get rid of Megadeth, get rid of Lucrezia, and just have Frank Sinatra singing.
Uh-oh, that would be great.
There's going to be a real problem coming up here in the future.
Yeah, we're actually going to have a music bed change.
The bumpers are going to change.
Yeah, and we don't know when it's going to go into effect, but
soon.
Yeah, it's going to happen soon.
Well,
So-
Free Talk Live's had the same bumpers for a dozen
for
years.
a decade. Yeah.
And,
it's time for a change.
Yeah, it's time for change.
So, Nathan, what were you calling about besides that? And no, that is not our warrant canary. So when that happens, that is not the warrant canary. Go ahead.
Okay, well, it was just my idea. I mean, the other ideas I came up with weren't very good. Like have Mark not appear on the show, or have Derek J be a statist for a week, or just stuff like that.
Yeah,
But,
those aren't as obvious.
I thought that was a good idea.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. Toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. I should have asked him why he's calling on the phone lines. Normally he calls on Skype.
We got some good suggestions from the chat room.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Mark would be Angry Spice. Or
The chat room's usually listening, unlike people on Facebook. So thank you, chatters.
Or don't give caffeine spice, or Old Spice.
It doesn't have to have the word
Very
spice in
funny.
it, I guess, is the point.
Right.
I could just be claiming to drink some caffeinated beverage during the show. Got my Dr. Pepper right here.
All right, so
And people will be like, oh no, this is a bad idea.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.